What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot. The NFL draft is finally in the books. We know where these players have landed, and now we can actually start doing some mock drafts with landing spots and, maybe assuming the value of players accurately instead of just trying to guess and missing wildly when it comes to the case of Shedeur Sanders. But that's not on any of us. That's on the entire NFL. We are going to have another great show tonight. We're doing a 1 QB mock. We'll get into Superflex next week, though my guest this week hates 1 QB, so this was the worst show possibly to have him on. But it's still going to be a fun mock draft. The room is full. Let's get into it. What is up? Welcome to Mock It Like It's Hot, Club Fantasy's weekly mock draft show. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. No Austin Amendolia this week, but the founder of Club Fantasy found himself with some free time. Josh Hudson, our second show this week. How you doing, my friend?
Oh, doing great. Anytime I can hop on and do a draft and I've got some time, let's do it.
Yeah, I saw you join the draft rather quickly, so I figured you were still hopping on the show, but we hadn't talked about it yet. I was like, okay, let me see if he's still getting on. And you are. Happy to have you here. And our guest, a return guest from last year, Trey Daubert from Vendetta Media. I think last year you said you've been called Hot Take Trey in the past.
Yeah, so that was going to be my first question. Am I still Hot Take Trey? Because last year I basically threw a no-hitter.
Yeah,
I mean, I was gonna say I gave you a Switzerland answer on Brian Thomas, but other than that, I basically threw a no-hitter and punched out 25 guys.
I say, and the Bucky Irving take as Cub Fantasy who adores Bucky Irving, that just was music to all of our ears.
Well, that's my favorite thing. It's like finding the next Bucky Irving, but nobody's contacted me on how I was right. Just found that weird.
Believe me, it was going to be asked on the show tonight, so we're gonna have plenty of time to talk about that. All right, guys, let me get the draft up on the screen here. Let's get this thing going. I'll lay it out for everybody. So, if you've never watched our show before, we are going to mock draft a rookie draft, 5 rounds, 50 players. I have my 2 guests in the draft with us. This one is going to be, like I said, 10 teams. It's more about the players when you do the number of players, when you do these rookie mocks to see who's going to be drafted, who's not going to be drafted, because we don't have actual teams. So there's no way for us to know, like, if we're building for need or building for value. This is all about value. I always like to call out our drafters when we get started. So from the 1 spot, we got our friend Chris Molina, Duarte at the 2, Vince Mapstone at the 3, Josh took the 4, Thompson has the 5, Say Watt again at the 6, Big Boned at the 7, Greedo at the 8, Steve Mack at the 9, and Trey takes the 10 spot. Before we get started, I do want to let you guys know we do still have that partnership going on with Dynasty Nerds. If you guys are looking to get better at Dynasty, you can use the promo code Club Fantasy to get 15% off of your membership. They have a ton of great tools over there. We use a lot of them for our draft prep. If you guys are looking, like I said, just to take over your Dynasty league, make sure you go over to Dynasty Nerds, use that promo code. You get great advice. We get a little bit of money. It's a win-win for everybody involved. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and start the draft, start asking you guys some questions, and I'm going to start really easy with the questions. Trey, I've already talked to Josh about this a bunch. What are your takeaways from the draft? It was kind of a boring first round for terms of fantasy football. Things kind of went the way we expected it to go, but just overall of the weekend, how did you come out of it feeling with some of your own takes, with confirmation bias or surprised by things?
That's kind of a broad question. I could go down like 35 different angles with this.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I guess we could start at the top. I guess this is my most controversial take. If I had the 101, I would trade that in a heartbeat.
Really?
I would. I think this whole Ashton Genty thing is a joke. I really do. I like this idea that everyone has put this guy in the Hall of Fame is insane. Like, I just don't get it. If we go back to last year, the running backs who really mattered, James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Saquon, Bijan, there was that group of 7. The record was out of control. What was the record of those backs? I had it written down. Those backs were 83 and 36. So this idea that Genty, now he goes to the Raiders, and they're pretty much a guaranteed last place team. They're not. Who are they beating in that division?
Yeah.
This idea that he's like a guaranteed Hall of Famer is crazy to me. I just don't understand it. The last 2 years, he's fumbled 9 times. Like I've never heard of a generational back that's fumbled 9 times in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's had that many fumbles to get everything
Hey,
started.
Tiki Barber can figure it out. I think Ashton Genty can figure it out.
And if we go look, I just think the universe gives us hints all the time. This past year in March Madness, there were like no upsets. There were no upsets in March Madness. I think NIL and the transfer portal has just decimated those lower leagues in college football. This idea, like he wasn't going against anybody. There were 6 total players drafted in the Mountain West. Ohio State had 7 guys off the board by pick 45. Like they're just not playing the same sport. And this idea that he had a great game against Penn State. He had 3.5 yards a carry or 3.3 yards per carry. And he fumbled twice. I've just never heard of a guy that had a great game and fumbled twice at 3.3 yards per carry.
Yeah, I was to say with turnovers being so precious, I think we do have to deem you hot take Trey until next year if you're proven to be right here, because you're the only person I've talked to that is against Genty. We had, I believe, John Lobb, who said he would be trading every other pick outside of the 1-1, like that we should be looking to trade them. And he gave some great advice that trade them before they get drafted because they're all going to lose an immense amount of value after they're drafted. And he kind of called that one right. But Josh, it's a little bit of a different take to say that maybe Genty ain't even worth the 1-1.
Well, I mean, I think he is still the best back in this class.
I think the guy you took's the best back.
I love TreVeyon Henderson.
And I remember Trey when I was pulling for our threads, Trey, you were very high on TreVeyon Henderson. In fact, I think you put it in the chat with all 3 of us here where you said, I'll have my article on the true number 1 back in this class out for you tomorrow. So,
right.
Yeah, no, I love TreVeyon Henderson. I just think the biggest separation, I think, between guys like Genty, Hampton, I'll even throw Quinshon Judkins into that conversation. I feel like they can handle more so than TreVeyon Henderson a true 3-down role in the NFL. We saw Ohio State try to use TreVeyon that way, and he kept getting hurt. I think he's designed more so to be an efficient back, kind of similar to like, early years like Shady McCoy, Jamal Charles before they really started to like.
Jamal Charles was awesome.
He was, I agree. But early in his career, he wasn't a 3-down back, right? And I think that's kind of like TreVeyon needs to kind of start that way before you start throwing him to the wolves with that 300-plus touch type season.
Can I counter your point on Henderson, though? Because I just think a lot of this industry, have you ever seen these live witness news clips that Jimmy Kimmel does?
Yeah.
I just think we cling on to narratives, and they're just not really true. Like, if we go back to that game where TreVeyon Henderson got hurt, Maris Leofau totally took a cheap shot to his ribs and he broke 2 ribs. Like, I don't know if that necessarily means he can't handle a workload because Maris Leofau took a cheap shot on him. Like, is a broken rib injury really evidence that he can't handle a workload?
I would
probably not.
I say it's not, but I guess the only concern is, and it's such a plus minus thing, is we haven't really seen him handle a workload because he didn't have to. Genty did have to, but back in the day, that was like a bad thing. If you came in with the amount of tread on your tires that Ashton Genty was coming in with, people were terrified of that.
He also had a shit ton of carries as a true freshman.
Yeah.
Like he was the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. By the way, he had more receiving yards than Marvin Harrison as a freshman. Like that's almost impossible. A running back did that.
I love that I'm getting called out for Vince Mapstone that the Rays are playing. And
yeah,
I got called out in the
hockey too, but I'd rather be with you guys.
I got called off in a chat earlier as well that the Warriors are playing. We just have fans of every other sport who are like, why do I keep scheduling these rookie drafts? Maybe Friday at 9:00 wasn't the best call on my part.
No, you did good because a lot of the playoff hockey games ended. There's only one game going to Game 7, so.
That's funny. Yeah, Vince has been yelling at me for weeks. But I think his Pacers got eliminated.
The Rays don't even have a stadium. They're not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're playing the Yankees right now. So
they're playing in the Yankees spring training stadium. So
they're actually playing in New York.
Yeah,
it's in New York anyway.
I mean, their home games have been in the Yankees spring training stadium.
Yep.
Which is just incredible. Such a weird season of baseball. Yeah. Trey, you're about to be on the clock. I have a feeling you'll be able to make your pick. But just continuing with that theme, I didn't know we were going to spend any time on Genty, but any other things jump out at you? Were you surprised? I mean, I don't think anyone was surprised to see Hampton go in the first round, but then no other running backs in the first round. Was that a surprise to you? The amount of wide receivers, anything else fantasy wise that kind of surprised you a bit?
I was surprised the Chargers took him.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. Like, okay, you signed Najee Harris, but like, was that really the move? Because I'm not really a Hampton guy. I guess that's another one of my hot takes. I think he's a spitting image of Beanie Wells. I don't really see it.
Josh was comping him to Najee Harris, and now they're.
I thought he was just a faster Najee Harris. The Beanie Wells, though,
there's zero creativity in his running style. I mean, zero. Yeah. He's making one cut,
for as
and
quick
you're not
as
getting
he
anything
is,
else.
I don't really see quickness in his game.
And during the combine, I don't think he was impressive at all. Like, I thought he was one of the worst combine performers there in the entire running back group.
Yeah, the Chargers taking him, and we had a big debate on the show during the live draft on whether or not that was kind of like a kiss of death for him, because he has the first round capital, but then you're going to a team where now you're stuck behind Najee Harris. But what I thought was really strange was after the draft, they tendered J.K. Dobbins. And I don't get what the Chargers, I mean, I guess you need as many healthy legs as you can get, especially if one of those legs is J.K. Dobbins. But it's just weird to me that you already have this tandem at running back, and now you're saying, hey, we want to bring you back too.
I'm just not really, like, in terms of the real NFL draft, I'm not really a believer in taking running backs in the first round.
Yeah.
I don't think he was nearly special enough to go in the first round. And the fact that, like, he's the 20th overall pick, that was insane to me. Like, I think his best case is he's a less knucklehead version of Mixon, which is a good player. I just wouldn't pull that kind of draft capital on that.
I was going to say Mixon, I think, was a 3rd round pick.
2nd round pick.
Yeah, he was second because of his
yeah, he's also an idiot.
I was going to say, I thought he fell to the 3rd because of the off-field stuff.
I think Kamara and James Conner were the 3rd round picks.
Kamara was.
I knew Kamara was, yeah.
And then I guess along that same note of just weird picks in the first round, how about Matthew Golden to the Green Bay Packers, Josh?
I think he stinks.
Oh, okay. So
we're on the same page there.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're on the same page as all of Club Fantasy. Our resident Packers fan was furious because they basically said, we're taking faster. I think he called him faster or younger Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And it's just like, why are you continually drafting players of the same prototype that aren't doing anything for you?
I didn't really get it. So the first 12 weeks of the year, he averaged 45 receiving yards per game. Like, that's not a first round pick.
No, not at all.
It's just not. And the thing I don't understand is the NFL draft community, we make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And we see these wide receivers who run fast 40 times, but they're not actually good wide receivers. He runs this fast 40 timer. It's like, yep, he's a first rounder. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I think he should have went in the 5th or 6th round.
I think a lot of it is us just remembering Al Davis and the Raiders, that they knew as soon as someone ran the fastest 40, they knew the Raiders were taking him with their first pick. So, and again, we keep banging our heads against stuff that just hasn't worked.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like the Packers, they made up their mind. The draft was in Green Bay. They've been consistently criticized for never drafting a wide receiver in the first round. And they said, we're just going to take the best one available, so that gets the crowd hyped. And I think that's really what it boiled down to me.
Like 2 years ago, he was at the University of Houston and he did nothing. Like, there's no long track record for this guy. He had 3 hot games in a college football playoff.
And even then, it was all on broken coverages. It wasn't even him actually creating the plays.
Yeah.
And by the way, he doesn't give a shit trying to block either. Like, doesn't care.
And, well, he also doesn't play to his 4.29 speed either.
No.
I do want to quickly throw Darth Twerk up on the screen here. I find this interesting because I would have somewhat considered this a possibility. It suggested that the Chargers tender Dobbins so they can get a comp pick if someone signs him. But, like, he went months with no one wanting him. And now you're like, oh, maybe someone wants him now. And we're going to, like, to me, it's going to make it less likely for someone to, you may have just screwed J.K. Dobbins over. Like, such a weird,
the Browns just did it with Elijah Moore. And technically, Bill signed him, but we'll see on that.
Okay, so the Browns did tender more, and I didn't know the Browns tendered more. Okay, because I did see the Bills sign him. Okay, so maybe there's something to it if you're going to get something. See on that. Yeah, definitely strange, guys. If you guys have never watched this show before, we're not going to break down every pick. I like to talk about the interesting picks. I like to talk about the interesting players. But one thing I did want to do, since we just did this draft 2 weeks ago, I want to remind you guys of what the ADP was 2 weeks ago. and then see how much it's changed so far. So what I'm about to read to you is this exact draft from 2 weeks ago. I did it as a 12-player draft, but this was the first round 2 weeks ago. Ashton Jeanty, Amarian Hampton, Tet McMillan, Travion Henderson, Travis Hunter, Luther Burden, Tyler Warren, Caleb Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, Quinshon Judkins, and then the 2 extra picks would have been Colston Loveland and Trey Harris. Then when we flip and look at this draft, towards the top, there was not a lot of change. Ashton Jeanty, Omarion Hampton, Travis Hunter moves all the way up to the 3. Travion Henderson fell to Josh at the 4. Tet McMillan at the 5. Quinshon Judkins at the 6. RJ Harvey shoots up the board. We're going to talk about him a little bit later. Emeka Egbuka is the one I'm probably going to want to talk about most. I don't know if that was an auto pick, if it kicked in then or if it kicked in later. Tyler Warren, Caleb Johnson. So the major ones that we saw change from 2 weeks ago, Trey, was Luther Burden, who obviously fell to Chicago in the second round of the draft. Caleb Johnson, who was a 3rd round pick for Pittsburgh. And then Loveland, who went at the 11 in the last draft and goes at the 11 at this draft, stays the same, even though he is the first tight end off the board in the draft. What do you have anything to throw in on just like that? I guess let's start with maybe the Chicago situation. They draft Colston Loveland as the first tight end. They get Luther Burden in the second round. These are guys who landing in Chicago has done nothing for their draft capital and probably hurt it a little bit.
Yeah, I would love to talk about this because I think people, they constantly fall into these narratives that aren't really true. Oh, well, Kyle Pitts stinks, so we can't take Brock Bowers high. And then Brock Bowers is awesome. So now we have to go and reach for Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. Like, I just don't think those guys are even close. Like, I really don't. I think in terms of like the scale, I think Warren is far closer to Freiermuth than he is the Bowers.
Wow.
So I like in terms of drafting, I would have no interest in using an early pick on Warren or Loveland. And the thing with Loveland, he's really not a blocker. And if we've learned anything about the tight end position, he better be a route running technician. And he's a pretty good receiver. Don't get me wrong. But if we've learned anything from Kyle Pitts, he's not good because he can't block. And teams treat him as a receiver, and he's not fast enough to be a receiver. The same thing's going to happen here with Loveland.
Josh, what Trey is describing here sounds a little bit like the trap we all fell into with Dalton Kincaid as well. Now,
Right.
Cade
I had a 4th round grade on Kincaid.
There you go. And so I said Kincaid has some time to prove us wrong, but it sounds like Trey saying that's not going to happen. Josh, do we think Loveland could fall into a similar situation there where we're talking 3 years from now about a guy who we just wasted a pick on, though I guess it's only the 11th pick.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you can say that probably about every tight end because how
Except
many
for Bowers.
tight ends?
Yeah.
Well, but again, like how many tight ends in the NFL truly are the first or second option in their team's passing attack?
4.
There's a
5.
small handful. There's not very many of them.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, those are the types of tight ends that we want for fantasy football. So, you know, really, when you look at Colston Loveland and you look at the firepower that's on this offense, they have DJ Moore. You draft Luther Burden. They spend a 1st round pick on Rome Odunze. You know, this team is going to throw to the running back position. DeAndre Swift's going to catch some passes. Whatever running back they ultimately bring in to replace him, whether it's, you know, later this year, next year, whatever, that's going to be an option as well. So there's a chance that Colston Loveland, if he doesn't come out and show that he is one of the better pass catchers on this team, that he may not be, you know, 5th or 6th in the pecking order, right?
Yep.
So that's going to be a chance. What I like about Loveland in this situation, Ben Johnson uses 12 personnel a ton. He wants 2 tight ends on the field. Cole Kmet's going to be the inline blocker. Yeah. Colston Loveland's going to be the guy that's going to be running routes and catching passes, excuse me. So if he's open and if he can be that route running technician, then yeah, he's going to see a lot of mismatches, therefore a lot of targets. That's what we saw with Sam Laporta in Ben Johnson's offense in Detroit. That's why he was getting so many looks his rookie year. Didn't get near as many looks last year because they made a concerted effort to get Jameson Williams the football. What's going to happen here in in Chicago? We don't know yet. There's a lot of unknowns in this offense. So really what you're doing at this point is you're drafting the talent and hoping that the talent wins out.
For fantasy, I like Loveland more than Warren.
Yeah, that I'm with you on.
We're a big group of Anthony Richardson haters, so anybody who's in that offense, yeah, that's.
I can't believe Field Yates still has a job for ranking him QB5.
And not to mention what Field Yates did to the fantasy industry after that ranking, because then everyone else felt they were too low and had to move him up. And
everyone loves to take the path of least resistance. We gotta copy everybody's list. It's so funny.
Well, like, because I had him at 15 based on the rushing upside, and people are like, you're really low compared to everyone else. And I'm like, no, they're really high compared to me. Let's just leave that at what it is.
He can't complete a high school pass.
Yeah. Well, I said he literally only has one throwing. There was a play last year where Alec Pierce came on a comeback route for like a 4th down that they needed at the end of the game. And he threw it to where Pierce was when he started to come back. And I'm like, he literally just rocks and fires. There's no middle for him.
That might have been the 10th best throw he made all year, though.
Out of bounds to an assistant coach. I want to stick with the tight end talk. This guy sees Josh. I always get the name wrong. It's Terrence Ferguson.
Correct.
Okay, I keep calling him Tyler off of that. There's like that actor from Modern Family. Terrence Ferguson moving up boards, and I wanted to check to see how right they were. In the draft 2 weeks ago, Terrence Ferguson was the 47th overall pick. In this draft, he goes off as the 27th overall pick. So 20 picks higher. Trey, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't know a lot about this kid. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. You got any takeaways from Terrence Ferguson?
I had to have wrote at least 250 draft profiles this year.
So he goes in the second round, which is where I think people are really moving up on him. So
I just don't like spending picks on tight ends. Like that's my thing. Like, why wouldn't you just trade a late pick for Jonnu Smith? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't hate the landing spot. The landing spot's cool, and he'll beat out Davis Allen because Davis Allen's not much. But with Ferguson, he's tall. You should like him for that. Got a big frame on him. The thing I didn't like about it is he wasn't the best tight end on Oregon this year. That was Kenyon Sadiq. The guy, Kenyon Sadiq, for the following year, he's better than Ferguson.
Okay.
So he wasn't the best tight end on his own team, which I don't love. And way too many times he's fallen over on the ground. Really clumsy in terms of his footwork. Like you'll find plays all over the place. He's just on the ground, and I don't know why. So he wasn't like overly high on my list, but I don't hate him.
And Josh, I'm just going to have you continue on the Ferguson, but I also wanted to point out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tight ends went in the pre-draft mock. 7 go in this mock. So only one guy disappeared. I'll have to go see it and figure out who it is. But to Trey's point, Josh, we have the 3 guys going in the first 2 rounds, 2 more going in the 3rd round, and 1 going in the 4th. Nobody waited till the 5th to just kind of wait on a tight end, including you 2, but neither one of you Oh, no, you did. You took Arroyo in the 2nd, Trey. We can talk about that later. But Josh, to Trey's point, you could probably get other tight ends out there in the world, and yet everybody's drafting them super early. I think it's just because the position is such a wasteland. We're just trying to find that next big guy.
Yeah, I do like the landing spot for Ferguson. I mean, we've seen Sean McVay utilize the tight end position a lot of times, with Tyler Higbee's pops. It's always because a wide receiver misses time. And, we've seen injuries creep up with Puka. Obviously, Devontae Adams coming there, getting the 2-year deal. He's on the older side. Who knows? Maybe injuries strike him as well. That's going to boost the tight end position up in this offense. We also saw them kind of stop throwing to the running back last year. Kieran Williams just stopped catching passes. He just maintained fantasy value because he kept scoring touchdowns. So, I mean, there's definitely an opportunity. There's a world where Ferguson could eventually become the 3rd target in that offense. I don't believe it's going to be this year, but I think if you see that pathway over the next 2-3 years, then he becomes a viable fantasy option. I think when you're looking at this tight end class, I believe I have him as my tight end 4, just based on landing spot and opportunity behind Loveland Warren and Mason Taylor.
Can I jump in real quick, though? Because last year we saw this. Ben Sinnott got picked in like the 2nd round of every draft.
Yes.
Yep.
These tight ends
didn't see the field.
These tight ends take
a lot of time.
The list of tight ends that go out there and dominate as rookies, it's like next to 0.
Yeah, it's
so like why?
And that was one thing.
Like Brock Bowers.
Like if you like Ferguson, let this guy pick him in the 3rd round, and then offer him a 5th round pick next year for him.
Yeah,
and that's how you should do it in dynasty drafts. I mean, I remember after Trey McBride's rookie year, there was one draft or one league where I traded, I think it was a 3rd round pick and Daniel Bellinger to get Trey McBride.
A guy in my league cut him.
Yep.
After his rookie year.
There you go. Yeah, because you invest in, the guy that, is the top of the class,
right?
But then don't realize that A, he's going to a shitty offense, or B, tight ends just take time. They're basically learning 2 positions. They're learning the offensive line.
I mean,
they're learning the
wide
wide receiver
is another good example. He did nothing for 2 years.
Yep. So, and that's kind of that, like, I see both sides of it. Like, Mason Taylor is somebody that I think could actually make an impact this year because they don't have a ton of target competition in that Jets offense.
I don't like the Jets, but sure.
And you know what? That's 100% fair. But we've seen Justin Fields target the tight end position.
Yeah.
He doesn't target the running back position very much.
And he's not Mason Taylor.
And who's the wide receiver 2 with the Jets?
He's not a crazy route runner either. Like, a lot of his production at LSU was a lot of dump offs, not a lot of yards down the field stuff either. So I could see that.
Yeah, we are getting a reputation for just hating the tight ends. And Darth Twerk talks about in one of their leagues, they actually have eliminated the tight end, which is something Austin Amendola.
Hey, at least you didn't pull a Matthew Berry and say Ben Sinnott was going to outscore Brock Bowers. At least you didn't do that.
There's that.
I would never do that because, and honestly, we were very low on Ben Sinnott. We're like, why are we hyping up a fullback?
That was the part that had me tripping. Is so I tell this story. I did not know a ton about college football. I know a little bit more now because there's a video game around.
You should watch college football though. You can't understand the Saturday, or you can't understand the Sunday game without understanding the Saturday game.
I understand the Sunday game fine. I did watch college football for many years, and I don't feel college football is so different now than the NFL. I don't know that how much of it actually translates outside of speed, but that's a conversation for another day. But what I did want to bring up was when I went and watched Ben Sinnott film, I wasn't sure if I was watching the right person because they kept talking about him being a fullback. And I'm like, I thought this kid was a tight end. Like, what is going on here? But you bring up a very interesting point because you brought up how you had leagues where Trey McBride was cut.
Yep.
Ben Sinnott is probably on a massive amount of taxi squads right now. And this week, we are going to see taxi squads trimmed like crazy. So I went and looked. He is only rostered in 88% of sleeper dynasty leagues right now. And I'm going to be very interested to see after the massive exodus of taxi squads this week, if by next week's show, if that's below like 70%, and I will not.
That's going to be down to 8%.
Surprised. I don't think it'll quite go that low.
I don't think it'll be that low, Trey, but I'm with you. I wasn't really a big Sinnott guy, but I mean, it's pretty clear that they drafted him to be more the receiving tight end option versus the blocking tight end option. Because when you look at the splits on that team, like John Bates was playing a ton because he's the inline blocker.
John Bates had more receiving yards than him.
Yeah,
I know that's the sad part. But and then Zach Ertz being the receiving option, right? Well, Zach Ertz actually played the full season, which not a lot of people really expected him to do, which kind of limited Ben Sinnott's upside, if you will, right? If Zach Ertz is playing and not on the field, or, if he's on the field, then Sinnott's not going to be on the field.
Yeah. I love that we hate tight ends so much we can't even talk about this year's anymore. We have to go to last year's. We have a listener who is on the clock as we speak. So let's cut into the show and help this person out a little bit. They're almost on the clock at the 112. It's a 14-man league, half-point superflex tight end premium. They're looking at 3 of the following players on the board: Tyler Warren at tight end, Caleb Johnson at running back, Golden at wide receiver, and Jackson Dart. So it's 4 players. So one of them will be gone is what he's saying. So I guess how do we rank these players in a super flex? We got Warren, Johnson, Golden, and Dart. Trey, I'll let you go ahead and get us started.
I think Johnson's the number 1 by a mile. And I'm not even a huge Johnson fan. I just think in terms of the Steelers offense, I mean, him getting 300 carries, is that like impossible?
That Josh has been, you and Josh are pretty well in lockstep.
I'm not even a Johnson fan, but this landing spot, I mean, he's going to be a hog in terms of getting the ball. I would probably go Warren 2. I think Jackson Dart was my QB 7, so him maybe 3, and then Golden 4.
Josh?
Sorry, I was answering one of the questions in the chat. I'm reading this now.
I was actually going to bring that question up too, because I think it's interesting to see where our takes stand on this. So yeah, but anyway, go ahead, Josh.
Looking at 3 of the following on the board: Warren, Johnson, Golden, Dart. I mean, being super flex in a 14 team, I'm probably taking Jackson Dart.
Oof.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest Dart fan, but at the end of the day, quarterbacks still hold more insulated value.
Not if everybody gets fired and he's out of the job.
You know what? I don't disagree with you. It's kind of how I feel with Tyler Shugg, mainly because of the simple fact that he was a second round pick though versus Dart, who was a first.
Yeah, Shugg's the interesting case.
I'm higher on Shugg than most people, but I'm not overly high on him.
Yeah, I was gonna say Shugg has the Malik Willis, Desmond Ridder stigma, where
I think he's better than that.
Yeah, and I agree. But I think everyone's got so worried about that that quarterback class that
you
now
should like him. He's tall.
Oh, he's also 28 years old and 3 season-ending injuries.
Same recruiting class as Penn.
I like tall wide receivers. Let's be very clear. I have a type and a position, not just tall guys. But anyway,
Josh, same recruiting class as Penn Sewell, and he already got his
I remember hearing about that, and then. There was a clip that he was throwing to Jawan Johnson, I think it was, in his freshman year, and Jawan Johnson is on his third NFL contract. So
it's rough. I mean, Superflex tight end premium. Actually, I do have Caleb Johnson.
I thought you might, Josh, because I know you're high.
Yeah, I have Caleb Johnson, Dart, Warren, and then Golden.
That's about how I would rank them. I wouldn't fault anybody for taking Dart. Curtis, if you're still with us, what's your current quarterback situation? But then there is a follow-up to this. James asked, is Dart even guaranteed to play? And that's pretty well a no. And that's where
fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and that's where it comes down to gambling on quarterbacks in a super flex where you just want to be the guy holding all of the quarterbacks. So
yeah, I would not bank on Jackson Dart playing this year. If I was the Giants, I would not be playing him this year.
They're going to suck though and be forced to play him.
And then I think that's kind of what it's going to end up being is if they truly end up sucking and then they're just going to outright bench Russ and be like, look, man, this playing Dart and seeing what they have is ultimately going to be what would have a chance to save their jobs.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly throw Curtis back up on the screen. Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, Tua are his current run of quarterbacks. Change anything Johnson for you, Trey, or is it still Caleb Johnson?
I would still go Johnson first then.
Yeah, I probably would too. You have Williams and Tua you're going to be able to play this year and then just hope for the best when it comes to Anthony Richardson. I'm probably not going Tyler Warren. I know a lot of people are pushing Warren, but this show's been kind of anti-Warren as it stands.
I will say that any kind of quarterback depth that you can get in a 14-team league, I feel like that's going to take precedent.
Here's the thing with Warren, though. He couldn't beat out Theo Johnson. Last year, I went on this rant.
It's a really
Jonathan Brooks. He couldn't beat out Roshan Johnson. Why is nobody answering this question? And then I think we found out pretty early. Yeah, you know what? Maybe he wasn't the best running back in the draft. Tyler Warren, he did nothing for 4 years, and he couldn't beat out Theo Johnson. Why is that the case? Nobody wants to talk about that. Now, they had 0 wide receivers at Penn State, so they had to force feed him the ball. But I don't think he's nearly as good as being the 14th best player in the draft.
I don't think you're wrong at all. That's such an and that's where knowing the Saturday game is helping you greatly, because knowing shit like that, I love Theo Johnson, but you should be able to beat Theo Johnson if you're the best tight end. I do want to go back to a question James threw in there that Josh answered facetiously in the chat and said that people should be paying you to pick up Ben Sinnott. But I do want to ask, because you brought up Trey McBride was cut, and obviously we're not a big Ben Sinnott show, but tight ends do take time to develop. If you see Ben Sinnott dropped and you have room and you're able to drop him on a taxi squad, you're already shaking your head, Trey. No, you're not going for this at all.
Absolutely not. I have no interest in H-backs.
That's fair, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I mean, like I said, I wasn't the biggest Sinnott guy coming out last year. Again, for the simple fact that I don't really think he's a tight end. I think he's an H-back. And that's just not really how teams utilize them. I mean, we see all the time.
Not in today's NFL. That had its heyday from 2006 to 2008.
Exactly. And I feel like by the time that, Sinnott actually learns how to play in the NFL, Kingsbury's probably going to get another shot as a head coach, and he's going to be nothing. So, but I mean, if your taxi squad can hold non-rookies, I don't hate it. If maybe you only have a couple of draft picks because you traded them all because you're in a win now mode kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you just kind of need bodies. I'm okay with that, because the one time that Sinnott has a top 12 week, you can sell him for more than what you got him for.
All right, that's enough tight end talk. We've already spent far too much time on tight ends, and the crowd's getting mad that we're hating on them. I want to pivot over to the running backs. And this question got much less interesting, Trey, when I remembered that TreVeyon Henderson was your number one back. But I'm still going to stick with my question. And what I wanted to do is I always do a round of keep, trade, cut on this show. And I kept it very simple for myself. And I wanted to look at the second round running backs, meaning the guys who were taken in round 2 of the NFL draft, because there happened to be 3 of them in a keep, trade, cut situation. So Josh, I'm going to let you answer first. The second round running backs, keep, trade, cut, TreVeyon Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, RJ Harvey. Feel free to break these players down, break down their situation. We have some time to kill. So,
I'm going to keep Henderson. I'm going to
drafted him. I hope so.
Yeah, right. I'm going to keep Henderson. I'm going to I'll trade Judkins and I'll cut Harvey. Sorry, Vince, but I'm not the biggest RJ Harvey guy.
Okay.
It has really nothing to do with age or anything of that nature. I think when we're just talking, landing spots and all that kind of information that we now have, I think people are misrepresenting the Denver Broncos landing spot, in my personal opinion.
So that's what I was going to ask, Josh. So this could be good because I might be one of these misrepresenters, because I was going to say, is Denver not, at least for year 1, the better landing spot than Cleveland?
I would disagree wholeheartedly with
Perfectly.
that. Yes, Sean Payton loves to throw to the running backs. Typically, he's between 25 and 29% target share to the running back position. Here's the thing you got to understand, though. A lot of those years came with Alvin Kamara at the running back position.
Yeah.
Alvin Kamara doesn't exist in Denver. They don't have a pass-catching back that is that type of skill set. So I think on a good season, maybe we're looking more of the 22 to 24% in that target share range. RJ Harvey never saw more than 29 targets in a season in college. And I think sometimes people try very hard to project what somebody can do based off of a extremely small sample size. When somebody is a really good back, I'll take Nick Chubb, take Jonathan Taylor, for instance, right? People are really good backs. They get a small taste of like 1 or 2 like big plays that they made, and they're like, oh, this player can catch passes. It's not a problem. They come into the NFL and the teams say, I just need you to run the damn football. That's it. I don't care about your pass catching. I've got somebody else to do that. But yet everybody still says, and they hang on to, well, I saw him catch 1 or 2 really good passes and turn them into like huge chunk plays. I know they could do it. And then they just want to argue with themselves and the ether about why the coach is so stupid and won't throw him the football. And here's the thing. In Denver, they have Jaleel McLaughlin for this role specifically to catch passes. He is going to rotate running backs. This is what he's done for years upon years. And I think that when people are saying that he has an opportunity for 300 plus touches, maybe in an alternate world, sure. I don't see that this year. I really don't, because I don't think he's going to get maybe more than 35 targets. Is there an opportunity for 200 rush attempts? 100%. We've also seen players suck in year 1 and actually get better. So maybe there is a chance that Audric Estime turns into a 1-2 down hammer. Again, Trey, I'm not saying it can't be.
He's a turd.
But there's an opportunity. Everybody that's leaning into, oh, well, this is Sean Payton's guy. This is the guy that Sean Payton drafted. Let's not lose sight of the fact that Sean Payton also drafted Audric Estime. And Marvin Mims, who was his first overall pick in the Denver Broncos organization and quickly decided to not want to throw the football to.
Yeah, not
it
on the field enough. So Trey, I have a feeling you'll be keeping Henderson as well. When I do these, I always look for the best trade value. And I wonder if that's Henderson, but I also think you like Henderson so much that wouldn't influence you at all.
Yeah, I have the same answer. Although I'd like to counter on some of these points, just for people to think about, I guess.
No, 100. This is what it's all about. And I knew you would.
Yeah, I just think if people are all thinking alike, nobody's thinking.
Yeah, that's a great point.
In terms of RJ Harvey, I would say I like him more than you do, Josh, but I'll say this. So he's a converted quarterback. So in terms of the, hey, I'm going to catch passes, I think you're right on that. Although I'll say this, I don't know how much of an opportunity there was in that goofy Gus Malzahn offense. I mean, that is a high school offense.
That's fair.
There is a chance that he can do it. And his skill set, he's fast, he can bend his knees, and he can catch. It's not like he can't catch. So I think there's a chance that he can do it. But yeah, I would have the same answer. But I would say this, though, too. My number one golden rule in fantasy, I do not want running backs on bad teams. It plays out year and year and year and year and year. Judkins going to the Browns, that terrifies me. Like, they're just not a good team. How much touchdown equity is there really going to be there? Especially if he's just the hammer and Dylan Sampson is stealing the receptions, because that's a possibility.
I would be more worried about Jerome Ford on the receptions versus Dylan Sampson.
Either way, it's very possible.
It's not very possible.
It's very possible that Judkins is the hammer on a bad Browns team. How valuable is he if the Browns suck?
Yeah,
I mean, in theory, you could say the same thing about Caleb Johnson and the Steelers. They don't even have a fucking quarterback.
True, which is why I was terrified to take it, but I felt like I had to.
And we'll talk about that pick here towards the end of the show. We're just kind of going by positions. I do want to point out we're not spending a ton of time on quarterbacks. Only 5 quarterbacks even went in this draft. And a 1 QB quarterbacks just don't matter. You've heard it all about Cam Ward. You either need a quarterback or you don't in a 1 QB, and that's just kind of where it stands. And these guys already said they wouldn't touch Jackson Dart in a super flex at the 112. So they're not worried much about these quarterbacks for the rest of this draft. But so we're not going to spend a ton of time there. What I did want to look at, guys, is the wide receivers. And what I found interesting, at least for me personally, is the wide receivers start to become far less appealing right around the beginning of the second round. Like, I like Travis Hunter. I like Tet McMillan. I like Igmika Ibuka. We all hate Matthew Golden based on what we're talking about here. We didn't spend a lot of time on Trey Harris, but where I wanted to start this conversation is the Jalen Noel pick. So we have him going at 2-9, and then the wide receivers behind him, Royals, A.A. Maynor, Williams, Pat Bryant, Tesla, Torrey Horton all the way at the end, 4 wide receivers total in the 5th round. All of these wide receivers kind of give me the ick, Trey. Are we missing anything on these wide receivers? It's kind of holding true for what people were saying about them before the draft.
So I think I have a perfect analogy for this. Last year, I came on the show and said, I don't like any of the running backs.
Yeah.
I think that's the wide receiver class this year.
Okay.
I think they've inverted. So last year, all the good wide receivers were there. Harrison, Thomas, Neighbors, that whole group. Now it's the inverse. The running backs are really good, and we have a lot of shitty wide receivers. Noel, if this draft was 10 rounds, I wouldn't have taken Noel.
So I wanted to ask you about that, because I actually saw arguments being made in one of our groups today for Noel over Higgins, who Higgins has the better draft capital. So you're not buying into that at all.
Name one Iowa State wide receiver who has done anything at the NFL level.
We're helmet scouting. I love this segment.
Well, by the way, I think Iowa State's quarterback was really good too. I know not a lot of people are Rocco Becht fans out there, but this idea that they didn't have a lot of quarterback help, I think that's false. And the Big 12, we've seen this over and over and over again. That's not a conference that plays defense.
Pretty incredibly, I just want to throw this out there. Noel went in the 2-9 in the draft 2 weeks before this, and then goes in the exact same spot in this draft. So falling to the 3rd round and being the 2nd wide receiver drafted by his own team did nothing to his ADP, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as, like, I personally, I'm taking Higgins over Noel in my rookie drafts. Not because I think that necessarily that Higgins is better than Noel. I had him, pretty close as prospects. Obviously the round difference that plays into it. But for me, it boils down to the offense. They're bringing in Nick Caley, former pass game coordinator with the Rams, and Sean McVay. Sean McVay is going, that system runs a ton of 11 personnel. The 2 teams that had the highest amount of 11 personnel run in the NFL last year, the Rams and the Falcons. The Falcons coordinator, Zach Robinson, used to work with Sean McVay with the Rams. This is a trend with these teams. This is what they do. Outside of Nico Collins and the recently traded for Christian Kirk, they have next to nothing at wide receiver. So they needed wide receivers. If they're going to run this 11 personnel, they need bodies, right? That's what these picks were for. So at that point, it becomes which wide receivers are going to step up and actually take this target share, because we know Nico Collins is going to eat. That's what we do know. But then it becomes who becomes that second target. can Christian Kirk stay healthy? Because he hasn't the last few years. He's mostly going to run out of the slot. They're going to move him around a lot. Higgins is more traditionally an outside guy, but he does move inside and out, which I think can actually help his value in this particular offense. Noel is really just kind of a smaller version of that. I think he's got a lot more juice than Higgins. But when you have kind of like twin towers on the outside with Higgins and Collins, that to me is going to create so many mismatches for CJ Stroud down the field that I think that's what Nick Caley's going to want to take advantage of. That's why I would have Higgins a lot higher than Noel here.
I think 1 year from now, you're going to look at Noel and he's going to be the Jalen Polk of last year.
Ooh.
Well, what's God?
Because of skill set or because of situation?
Because of skill set. I think he's tiny. I think he can't catch. And I don't really think he can get open that well.
I want to.
I think he's a tiny slot receiver.
Yeah, I want to ask about third round. The only wide receiver to go in the third round in this draft, not in the real draft, Jalen Royals. Is this trade people getting too caught up on? I want a piece of the Kansas City offense because
Probably.
like I said, this is, and again, I don't remember what picks were auto picks and not auto picks because it goes away when the draft ends. I also noticed, Trey, so I'm going to have you talk about Royals a little bit, but I also noticed that Ty Felton didn't even go in this draft as a third round wide receiver in the NFL. A little bit surprising to me with 50 picks.
I just think with Royals, like, I'm not going to rush to take a guy who was a walk-on at a JUCO school. That's just my opinion. I think if he pans out, it'll be 2-3 years from now, and you'll be able to get him later.
Yeah.
It'll be the same thing with Sky Moore, where everyone lost their minds over Sky Moore. And now you can have Sky Moore for free if you want him because he's just not that good. With Ty Felton, I mean, where's the playing time? I mean, Jefferson and Addison, he's not beating those two guys out. So,
and that's kind of what I figured was happening, where they're saying he's going to have to primarily compete with Jalen Naylor, and that was a role that wasn't all that valuable in fantasy when people were healthy last year. So,
yeah, I'm kind of the same mindset when it comes to Felton. I think Royals and Noel actually are very similar stylistically when I watch them play. But the way that the coach speak has been talking, they see a lot of Rashee Rice in Jalen Royals. And I mean, I personally don't, but if that's how they want to use him,
everybody beats up USC and he couldn't do it.
Ooh,
oh, there you go. So I don't hate Royals as like, Rashee Rice insurance. Like if you have Rice and you're kind of worried because, coming back from the injury, whatever, maybe take a flyer on him. I mean, really, at the end of the day, how many of these third, fourth, fifth round rookie picks are ultimately going to pan out, right?
If you take Bucky Irving, it'll pan out great.
Again, that's there's always the exceptions, right?
Sure.
Like,
Sure.
I mean,
I
have Royals in one where I have
great
Rashee Rice. So, and I didn't hate doing that. Like, I'm gonna. It's an insurance pick at that point, but he ended up at like 4 or 5 for me.
So, Josh, the last thing I was going to ask with these wide receivers before I have you guys break down your teams was kind of something that Trey just kind of brought up for my head, was just the Patriots in general. 2 wide receivers drafted in each of the last 2 drafts, yet they're also still spending money on free agent wide receivers. Is this a case where they're just going to bring like 10 guys that they have mild investments into? Are they just going to bring 10 guys to camp and let the best 6 make it? Like, what is New England doing at this wide receiver position?
This is a question.
That's what it feels like.
Starting with Josh here.
Okay.
So
I mean, that's honestly what it feels like. I mean, we've already seen Kayshon Boutte's name come up in trade talks. It's been a 3rd round pick on Kyle Williams. Which, by the way, no matter what you think of Kyle Williams, the team spent a 3rd round pick. They don't have any definitive starters. I don't know why he's getting so buried in rookie drafts. Just my personal opinion.
Well, wasn't that the name that Jagger brought up for us as one of his sleepers in this draft?
Yeah, he was a Washington State kid, and he had honestly his best season with Cam Ward there. So
he's fast and he's got good releases, but he's not a number 1. Like he's not going to.
No, he's definitely not a number 1. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And that's really what I think the biggest issue with this receiving class is. You have 2 guys, Hunter and McMillan, who can conceivably become wide receiver 1s on respective teams. And with Hunter, I'll say 1B simply because Brian Thomas Jr. is there. But everybody else, their ceiling is a wide receiver 2. And when you're looking at some of these later round picks, the only guy that I think might have a pathway within a year or 2 to become a wide receiver 1 is actually Alec Ayamanor in Tennessee. He's the only one because Callahan's already come out and said he's likely going to be their X when all is said and done.
Trey, am I right? Is Alec the one you said was a tight end?
No, that's Jack Besh.
Oh, Besh. Okay. I remember
Which is funny because the Raiders, the one thing they have is a tight end.
Yeah. Okay. I knew there was somebody that when we were talking about it,
Well, he was recruited as a tight end.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize that.
And just personally to me, the way he sinks his hips, he's not an outside receiver. Like you're going to have to play him in the slot. Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to have to. He's not making it as an outside receiver.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of people are, I think, buying in on Besh. He goes in the 2-8 of this draft. A lot of people are buying in just because of the need that the Raiders have at wide receiver. So,
well, this is what we were talking about. I think it was last week, Ryan. Chip Kelly's system. Who did he make famous in Philly? Jordan Matthews, who converted to tight end. That's the position that Jack Besh is going to play in that offense.
Yeah.
So it might be good as long as Chip Kelly's there.
Exactly.
Maybe. Yeah. Ayamanor can't catch though. That's the problem I have with him. He let
I knew that. I was gonna say.
He can catch only against Travis Hunter. That's
fair. The thing. He had a great game against Travis Hunter.
No, I knew you didn't like him, Trey, because I remember when I was doing the blurb for your article, you were like the only person who posted a straight up like negative report on.
I'm just a believer that you have to be able to catch the football.
Yeah, a wide receiver who can't catch, that's a little bit of a problem.
Him and Arian Smith had the 2 worst drop rates of any of the receivers.
Interesting. And Arian Smith doesn't go drafted in. Ayamanor goes in the 4th round. First pick, Chris Molina. All right, guys. I like to have you guys break down your drafts. And Trey, you get the added pressure of, did you get this year's Bucky Irving, or is there a guy you want to throw in afterward? But for the most part, I want you to just go through your 5 picks. Let us know why people should be looking for them in the draft. And
I might have gotten the next year's Bucky Irving.
I like it. Okay.
I guess with Caleb Johnson, I'm not like overly high on him, but he fits the scheme. Outside zone runner. He's going to get volume. He wasn't super high on my list, but he seems very reliable. Iowa running back. He actually caught the ball better than I thought he would at the combine. So I don't think he's going to be a total 0 in that category. And Arthur Smith, like they're going to run the ball. So picking at the back of the back. I mean, I won every fantasy league I was in last year. So I figured I'd take the back. Elijah Arroyo's my number 1 tight end. I don't care what anybody says.
Look, as a Miami fan, I love that.
I say Josh is loving it.
I think he's the best tight end in the draft. At the Senior Bowl, I think that was the best tight end workout I've ever seen. I mean, he dummied every single person at the Senior Bowl. Like it was just ridiculous. And by the way, like I think this isn't an exact comp, but in terms of why didn't people like Ladd McConkey? Well, he played all of last year on 1 leg. Yeah. And then they said, well, he's not putting up big stats. Well, he's got 1 leg. He's totally
let him get healthy.
With Arroyo, if he did what he did last year over the last 3 years, he's definitely going higher. There's no question about that. People are worried about the injury stuff, and I get it. Knock on wood. Hopefully he stays healthy. But in terms of pure talent, I think he's the best player at the tight end position. Jordan James is who I'm very, very excited about. I would want to leave every single draft with Jordan James. So I hope I don't go too long-winded here, but I love paying attention to.
You're fine, buddy.
I love paying attention to recruiting rankings. I just think there's such a big emphasis on who is recruiting who.
Okay.
So you got it's basically a former Georgia staff. Jordan James is from Nashville, Tennessee. Georgia wanted him bad. So they lose I can't think of his name. The head coach at Oregon. It's been a long day. What the hell is his name?
You're not getting it from either one of us.
Anyway, he used to be the DC at Georgia, goes to Oregon. That basically made him switch to Oregon. Dan Lanning. Yeah. Lanning. So they're basically an SEC staff. They get Bucky Irving. He played at Minnesota. They get him to transfer there. Then they take Jordan James from Nashville, Tennessee, who otherwise would have played at Georgia. If he had a Georgia helmet on, I think he goes way higher.
Oh, interesting.
He is your classic, let's say, Alex Bregman. Maybe he'll hit 20 homers, but he's going to hit a shit ton of doubles.
Okay.
He's very, very efficient, not overly fast, but he's very, very efficient, knows how to bend his knees, can catch the football. He was Bucky Irving's backup. And when he was Bucky Irving's backup, every time I watched Oregon, I'm like, he might be better. He averaged 70 yards a carry behind Bucky Irving.
Well, and what's funny is that's what a lot of people were saying about Irving last year is the knock on Irving is that Jordan James kind of outperformed him sometimes. So.
But now this is the same mistake. People don't like him because he didn't run fast.
Yeah.
He didn't run fast.
Yeah, where did we hear that before?
He didn't run fast, which again, everyone's going to be flawed in their own ways. But
yeah.
And then Monungai, I love him. I can't believe, like, if this was a normal running back draft, I think he would have went in the 4th round.
Wow.
Rutgers, again, this is Schiano knows how to find running backs.
Yeah.
Pacheco,
doing it for
Ray
years.
Rice back in the day. They had Gus Edwards once upon a time. He was a star Don Bosco prep in New Jersey, former 3-star recruit. Again, this is another guy. He's just not fast, but he's tough as hell, 0 career fumbles. And what if he can take on that power back role behind DeAndre Swift?
Yeah.
I think he could have some serious value. I love him. I was he led the Big Ten in rushing yards 2 years ago.
Interesting.
All those Ohio State backs,
Yeah.
Caleb, he was the Big Ten rushing leader 2 years ago.
That was when Donovan Edwards was getting all that hype.
Yeah.
So
Which
yeah.
I don't hate Donovan Edwards, but and then Torrey Horton, if you just go watch them against Colorado, he beat the piss out of them. I think he's an unbelievable route runner. Now, he did have a knee injury, but I think that's the only reason he fell in the draft. But if his knee injury was so bad, he wouldn't have run a 4.3 whatever at the combine. I think he's a stud. He's like one of the only receivers in this draft that I actually like. So I know that if Joe was filling in, he would have been disappointed and sent me eggplant emojis that I didn't take a running back with every pick. But there you have it.
Hey, I was going to say, yeah, and you waited till the last one and got, like you said, one of your favorite wide receivers in a class that not a lot of people like. If you're taking
and all
your
Horton
guy
has
at 50.
to do is beat out MVS. Let's be real here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Cup's not exactly a spring chicken. Like maybe 2 years from now, he's getting more of a role. 3 years
I was
from
going
now.
to say, yeah, we're talking a guy who there's a clear path to his value increase.
Yeah.
Josh, we spent a lot of time on Henderson. We actually talked about almost all of your guys except for your late guys, but feel free to take as much time as you want talking about these guys, Josh.
Yeah, with Henderson, I've been really high on him. I'm debating on how much I love and or hate the New England landing spot just because I don't know. I know he's going to get targets. Not 100% sold on how many carries McDaniels is going to give the predominant pass catching back in his offense. Yeah. That's what I'm still kind of waffling on. Higgins, as I mentioned, I think he can come in and be that 2 in that system, which maybe not this year, but definitely within 2 to 3 years can be a high volume target position for him. Jackson Dart, like I said, I mean, quarterbacks aren't going to go high in one quarterback leagues, but I think anytime you have an opportunity to draft a quarterback that has rushing upside, which Dart does give you if he develops as a passer, I will take a stab on that with the 3rd round pick. I don't think that's out of the question. Pat Bryant, Denver, that room in general is just up for grabs. Like Cortland Sutton, 30 years old.
That's another one like Denver where they just keep, or excuse me, like New England where they just keep adding wide receivers.
Yeah,
So.
They're just adding wide receivers and just throwing them at the wall and seeing which ones stick at this point. So, 27-year-old Devon Vele was basically their wide receiver 2 last year. So, Pat Bryant, I mean, his tape is what it is. I didn't think it was anything spectacular. But Sean Payton's already come out and said that he sees a lot of like Michael Thomas in his game. And when you're speaking of somebody like that kind of volume, like, all right, you're going to try to give him a chance. I'll stash him on a taxi squad for a year. I don't care. Kind of the same thing with Thornton. I mean, that's a big receiver who's fast. Pete Carroll had somebody like that in Seattle, and he goes by the name of DK Metcalf. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Dante Thornton can be that. But again, if he sits on a taxi squad for a year or two, maybe he becomes it, and if he doesn't, he's on the waiver wire. So
he'll be great for best ball leagues because he'll do nothing for 8 weeks. But I think he averaged 26 yards a catch this past year.
Yeah, it was absurd. Yeah,
if you're in a best ball league, he's way more valuable.
Well, and that's the thing. Other than, Brock Bowers, the Raiders don't have anybody like that right now. They have all these little wide receivers. Yeah. So,
and he's big too.
You get somebody big like that in that offense. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I was gonna say now there's my calling. Tall, fast wide receivers. Yes, please.
Yeah, really the biggest thing it's the knock on the Tennessee offense. Like there's been so many players that we've looked at that have come out with some decent draft capital and they just really haven't hit the ground running in the NFL. Like Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt, Jalen Wright.
He's also a little bit of a knucklehead. He was at Oregon and he transferred because of that. But
yeah.
I really wanted Jarquez Hunter. He was a huge target of mine. I think there's a real chance that like 2-3 years from now, he's like the stud in the Rams offense.
I have been scooping up Hunter in so many drafts.
He's what I don't care what anybody says. He's better than Blake Corum.
That makes me feel good for one reason. I hate when we go super negative on this show, and we basically shat on all of Thompson's picks. So I'm glad you guys like Jarquez.
Oh, we didn't. We didn't shit on McMillan. Come on now.
No, that's true. We would never do that. But we were not giving a lot of love to that team. So
by the way, what he did at Auburn, like Peyton Thorne is awful. He is awful. Like him posting the numbers he did should be praised because like they're playing dogs in the SEC constantly. Their quarterback can't move the ball. And Hunter, he comes from like a big weightlifting background. Strong, fast, powerful.
Oh,
I think there's a chance he could be
Trey Turner vibes.
I think there's a chance he could be a better receiving version of Bigsby, more reliable.
Okay. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up the show. I normally like to let you do this at the beginning of the show, Trey, and I forgot. Please let everybody know where they can find your work, what you're working on. You've literally, as you already pointed out, killed it. I told Josh this on our show, I think this last week. You were the only person to appear in all 31 threads. You had a article ready for all 31 of our threads. You're the only person to make all the threads. So we very much appreciate it. We love sharing people's work. We love sharing your work. Let people know where they can find it and what you got going on.
I'm a believer that you only live one time, and I want to be the best. So every day is a new day. Every day is a gift. And if you're not working if you're not writing 10 articles a day, what are you doing? Are you really trying to be the best version of yourself if you're not really giving everything that you have into this?
Yeah.
But so you can find me vendettasportsmedia.com. That is my website. I used to work for Fantasy Sharks, the Phillies, Sports Info Solutions. I just have a big mouth and I don't really blend in anywhere. So I went out on my own. In a couple days, we'll be releasing our new product. It's called Vendetta Fantasy Contest. It's basically a fantasy league of gambling. So the reason why we came up with this is DraftKings and all these places are continuing to be sued because it's responsible gambling. So we created basically the non-alcoholic beer version of, gambling. So I think it's going to be the future. And I'm a firm believer that gamification is going to be what launches this industry in the coming years. So be on the lookout for that. Content wise, I'll be releasing my draft grades and my 2026 way too early list, which is going to be led by Lenore Sellers. He's going to be QB1 for me going into the year.
Okay. I love that. That's the kid from South Carolina.
Yeah. Nobody can tackle this guy. He broke 17 tackles against Texas A&M this past year.
My goodness.
Yeah. Now he's got to take like 2 or 3 steps to become a better thrower. But in terms of fantasy, his rushing upside, that's who I picked in my draft for the first round. But
okay.
Yeah.
No, you love to hear it. Josh, we got intro to best ball coming up this week for no pun intended.
Yep. Wednesday, we're doing our intro to best ball show with Justin Herzig. He writes with Establish the Run and what's the SPC fantasy? I can't remember what it is, but he's going to be coming on. We're doing an intro to best ball, kind of getting people hyped for different forms of fantasy football.
There you go. So intro to best ball, that's going to be Wednesday. That is not going to be a live show this week. It will be pre-recorded, but we'll try to be in the chat answering any questions for you guys. We're going to record that show earlier in the day. This show will be back again next week. We're going to do another rookie draft. We're going to break it down from a super flex. Though with the way everybody hates the quarterbacks, it may just be the exact same draft that we just did today in the exact same order.
Cam Ward can play. Cam Ward can play.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Cam Ward will move way up. Everybody else might stay exactly where they are. So I'm going to be real interested to see how everything changes now. We'll be comparing it a lot to this draft versus other Superflex drafts and see how that plays out. That is going to be the end of the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for drafting with us. Again, we'll be back next week, but you'll see Club Fantasy live again. Well, not live, rather. You'll see Club Fantasy on your airwaves again Wednesday at 9 p.m. for our intro to best ball. Always remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and practice makes perfect. We will see you at the next mock draft.